Okay, you ready? Okay, I will call this meeting to order of the Logan-Cache Airport Authority Board. Good morning, everyone. And we're going to dive right into our agenda because we have a really full agenda today. Our first item on our agenda was to welcome our new and reappointed board members. And unfortunately, our newest board member, Cache County Council member Keegan Garrity, is traveling today and unable to be here. So we'll welcome him next time. But just so everyone knows, I appointed someone to replace Carl Ward, and that's Keegan Garrity. He's one of our county council members who represents the Logan area. So we'll look forward to having him here next time. And then I just wanted to also re-welcome Brett. He got reappointed to his spot by Mayor Daines at Logan City. So thank you, Brett, for being willing to continue to serve. That brings us to number 2 on our agenda, which is approval of the minutes from the January 2nd meeting. And those minutes are in your packet for your review.
Just one question, Janine. It says the mayor left twice.
The second one was Jeannie, I'll change that.
Okay. Oh,
Right.
perfect, thank you.
And again, since I missed the last little bit of the meeting, I wasn't going to vote to approve the minutes because I don't know what the last
Thanks for that.
little bit was.
Yeah, with that correction, I would move to approve the minutes as drafted.
Okay, we have a motion for approval. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. All right, we have a motion and a second for approval of the minutes with one minor correction. Any other comments or suggestions? Okay, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? All right, thank you very much. And that brings us to number 3 on our agenda, which is our manager's report. Bob?
Good morning, everybody. I'm actually going to start by turning some time over to Valerie. She's been working on our Title VI program, and I wanted her to talk about what that is, how to find it, how to make a complaint. Valerie, so if you could. Valerie gets all the credit. She's the only person in our staff that has worked on this. So when you see what this is and hear what it is, Valerie did that.
Okay, so here I'll just read out what Title VI is. So it assures that no person shall, on the grounds of race, color, national origin, including those of limited English proficiency, sex, creed, or age, be denied the benefits of or be otherwise subjected to discrimination under any program or activity that receives U.S. Department of Transportation funding. So how it will apply to us in the airport is we will regularly be trained at the airport on the Title VI non-discrimination paper. And Bob Lowe is the coordinator of Title VI at the airport, and he'll be handling and receiving any complaints for investigation. And around the airport, I've posted around some non-discrimination posters. We have them posted around the pilot lounge, restroom area, at the USU Flight School building, the FBO, and even just in the airport manager's office. There's a link that's been added to the Cache County website that will be updated as Title VI documents are added and updated. And a document for Title VI will be added and updated to the lease agreement.
My question is given the current administration, have you heard whether that will continue to be enforced, required? I mean, have we had any feedback? It's just one of those things that sounds like it could be changed in the current administration.
Yeah, it's updated every 3 years.
But again, do we know if there's been an executive order, or, I mean, have you reached out to the FAA to say with the president's, executive orders in the last 3 weeks, a lot of things have kind of been changing in regards to that?
Yeah, I don't know as much about the changes. I'm in contact with one of the legal consultants, and she's normally the one that updates me on that. But we will be submitting it for approval with the FAA, so we'll hear if there's, if we need to change it.
Thank you. Maybe.
I do have a quick insight. So, John Hillman-Faulkner, I got a call actually yesterday from the director of the ADO last night, and he said, proceed cautiously. They are under the waiting for guidance with explicitly with regards to the executive order. So that's out of the Denver Airport District Office. Their director called me and said, be cautious. We'll see how things developed. They are waiting for guidance explicitly from the FAA legal counsel.
So does it make sense to wait for a month to adopt this, or because the previous regulations have said we should have this in place, we go ahead and move on it now and then make any changes as directed later?
If you were at the point of adopting it, I would recommend continuing down that path. If you were at the initiation of the process, I would recommend probably delaying a little bit. But
And we don't have it specifically on our agenda to adopt today.
Okay, great.
But yeah, since it has been completed, there's nothing wrong with adopting it. According to Jesse Lyman, just don't be starting a brand new plan on today's date. Wait for guidance on that.
Maybe just put it on next month's agenda as a tentative based on further guidance.
That sounds great.
Me.
Thanks, Valerie.
Okay, each of you should have in your meeting packet there something that looks like this. This is the 2025 budget. And then we'll put it up on the screen here. Just wanted to go through some of the line items here so you know what we've got on here. Of course, the first item on there is where the money comes from.
If I could just give maybe a little bit more intro.
Yeah.
Jeannie, you asked last time in support of these financial reports that we'll be receiving each time, if we could have an overview of what we're looking at. And so Brittany, who is our financial analyst in our finance office, is actually sick today. And so I asked Bob if he would go through and give us an overview.
Okay.
Thank you, Bob. Go ahead.
Yep, you got it. I forgot to mention that. So, first line, Logan City.
Do we have that available to put up on the screen?
Excuse me.
The matrix just disconnected on us, but hang on one second.
Okay, great.
So 100,000 we get from Logan City. Interest, that's a $30,000 line. Gas refund, 8,000. Landing fees, that's for the 139 stuff. Oh, we got an echo.
So can I ask a question?
Yes, you can ask it twice.
I thought that the county and the city participated.
They do. The county's contribution is a little bit lower in the document.
All right.
Yep, good question.
Hey, Bob, let me just ask one quick question. If I look at the December 31st of 24 interest amount, it doesn't show there, and we were budgeting 1,500 versus 30,000. Why? And I know you didn't set a lot of this. It was done by the county, but any idea why they went so high on the 30,000 interest?
I can check with, I don't have that answer for you today, but I can check into it.
I was just comparing last year to this year, and that really stood out.
Can I get with Brittany and then reach out to you?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, I made a note here to do that. Okay. So we got down to, the 5,500, that landing fee, every time the football team lands or the visiting team lands, the FBO charges them a landing fee, and that's where we've got that dollar amount. What we're finding, what we've just realized is, I hate to admit this openly, but the basketball teams have been flying in and out, and we've been missing those landing fees, and sometimes they're flying in on airplanes that qualify as 139 flights. So we've caught that. We're making that correction to have the ARF here for them. What we're seeing is a lot of last-minute flight arrangements, and we are doing everything we can to get out in front of that oversight. Okay. Thanks.
Do those dollars flow through you back to the airport as income? Okay, 100% flows through. Thank you.
There was no year-to-date actual.
Where did we get to? So the fire department standby fees, we've got $5,000 for those, and then, you know, miscellaneous revenue here, $4,000.
You might just mention.
Land lease income, right now, we're looking at 113,400. With the new lease, if we get a new lease agreement in place with the increased amount of 43 cents a square foot versus the 22 cents per square foot, we anticipate that line item to change, to go up a little bit. Go ahead.
Just a question, if you could clarify. We've got in front of us the year-ending statements,
Okay.
and I just don't see like the Logan City shared net expense.
Or the Cache,
line item
or Cache County.
Or that too, and interest, so just wondering if we could get that updated. I'm guessing that those expenses were incurred, but maybe not reflected here.
Yeah,
Okay.
My guess is the finance department didn't close out the year yet as of the date that this was printed.
So when I went upstairs yesterday to get with Brittany, who was sick, I talked with Loriana, and she said that they're still trying to close out. They're in the process. They just didn't have.
I would think in terms of contributions from Logan City, that happened long, long ago, not December 31st. That's what I'm curious about. It's like they show zero contribution for
Right.
the year, and we would have done it far before December 31st.
Okay. I'll look into that.
And the same with the county.
Yeah,
I would assume they would have done it far before December 31st, since December 31st was the end of their fiscal year.
can you,
I can look into that. So I just found out about coming to the meeting just this morning, but,
You're the
I'll look-
finance director. Introduce
correct.
yourself. Thank you for coming.
yeah.
Not everyone.
Cache County Finance Director, West Bingham. I'll look into these. I'm taking some notes here. I know we haven't closed the year. I would question whether we maybe haven't invoiced yet, and we might receive that payment early in the year for the prior year. It's maybe what I would assume, but I'll take a look at it and get a response to the board.
Thanks, Wes.
are we talking about
The county
2024?
and the city.
Yeah, I think so. I think we haven't recorded that yet. I think that typically occurs right at year end, and then it's paid early on in the year, but I'll double check it.
But that should have shown up in '24. If it's paid early in the year, it should have been there.
Well, if it's invoiced and accrued early in the year for the prior year, so we'd be recording the invoice about now to close out the year, and then that's
About now.
paid.
That doesn't make any sense to me, because our fiscal year is July 1 to June 30, and it's an obligation that we put onto our books, and it would be paid.
We can check with Rich and see. Again, maybe they
Yeah.
were waiting for an invoice, so.
They,
They
at
may
this
be waiting
point,
to
we maybe
respond.
haven't sent an invoice out, that's what I would say.
To the county as well?
Correct. I don't think, we typically probably record those at the same time.
Well, having never seen one of these before, I guess that's why I don't understand.
Yeah,
But-
so it's good we're now getting these, so thank you
Yeah.
for presenting them. And we
Thanks,
continue
Wes.
to ask questions and bring ourselves up to speed.
Those are fair questions.
So which brings us to the county contribution there of 100, excuse me, got a frog in my throat this morning, that 100,000. Our fund balance there, just below that, $629 and $22. Total revenue fund is $1 million, just over $1 million and change, so. So our current budget, as far as my office is concerned, is, so the top line there, that full-time employee accounts for myself, Casey, our new full-timer, and part of Janine's salary, overtime, where Casey's now hourly, and let's say we have a big snow event, that would account for his time on that. Part-time employees, that amount, you know, we're gonna continue this, part-time employee program, the internship program from Utah State. Like to draw from that experience. Employee benefits, once again, that accounts for myself, for Casey, and part of Janine's. Subscriptions and memberships, there's $100 there for any membership that any of us pay for the year. Public notices, like you know, if we're going to put a bid out, we'll put a public notice out, or if I need to get in touch with someone through the mail system, we'll do it certified, and we'll use that fund. Travel, that's for conferences, hotel rooms, things of that nature. Office supplies, that's self-explanatory. Toner, paper, tape. Equipment, supplies, and maintenance, that's where we draw from there. So anything from oil to transmission fluid to shop rags to a truck needs to go to the shop to be repaired. That comes out of that fund. Of course, 13,000 non-capitalized equipment. Building and grounds, we've got 25,000. That would be for I think that goes to, most of that will go to the rental of the front loader that we have there. Snow removal, 65,000. A lot of that is for Public Works to come in and help us move the snow. This year, we haven't called them yet. We've only had to push snow twice this year, and the first time it was about 1 inch. Casey and I jumped on it and took care of it. The next time it was about 2 inches. These were both on Saturdays. We both just took care of it. We thought we were doing Public Works a favor by not calling them in on one last minute notice because we didn't know it was going to snow. It just did. And on a Saturday, and so we didn't call them thinking we were doing them a favor. We've since received information that they want to be called even on those days where it's just a little bit of snow and it's on the weekend. Some of these younger guys have growing families and they want that overtime money, and we've made that shift in mentality to anytime we plow, we're going to call them in. We thought we were doing them a favor. We weren't. We now know that.
You're saving
But
budget.
you're saving budget for the airport,
That's true. That's true.
so I don't think that you have to call them in if you don't think you need to.
Unless you have a contract. I don't know what the contract
We
says.
have an agreement with them, a gentleman's agreement. I think that we don't want to run them off, so to speak, by saying, oh, we don't call you, so they dedicate them elsewhere. So then we do need them, and they're like, sorry, they'll get here at noon because right now they're doing something else. We want to be a good neighbor with them. But to your point, Casey has done a lot of looking around because we've recognized, hey, we're not spending a lot of money on our snow removal this year. What should we do with that money? Can we do something with that money? And we've reached out to UDOT to see if we could, if they have any surplus vehicles that we could pick up with that wing blade on the side. I think our best option is we've reached out to Salt Lake International. They say that they have a hard time selling their trucks because nobody wants a 20-foot wide blade. Well, we do. And typically they go to auction and they sell pretty cheap. And so we're trying to get in touch with Salt Lake International before they send it to the auction and us get first right of refusal on a truck if that comes up. And so this is the money we would use for that.
Yeah, to Jeannie's point, I don't think we have an obligation to bring in the Public Works people if you can handle it.
Right.
If you can handle it in-house, and that means we have leftover money that we can use for equipment at the end of the year, I like that approach.
Okay. That was our plan. So moving forward, we're more aware of our relationship with them, and we want to certainly be good stewards of the airport's money, but we also want to if we do call them, we want them to be able to respond, and you understand the dynamic, so. Let's see, vegetation,
I don't I guess I don't understand that they're young people and they want the overtime. That's the
Well,
part I don't understand.
okay, yeah.
I mean,
Well,
that's,
I'm just telling you the real reason that they want to come in. I mean, we've all been young families before, and certainly,
Okay, we probably just need to move on
Yeah.
this if we're gonna get through this. We're
yeah,
already
okay.
20 minutes.
Vegetation, so we spray weeds. That's we go through the county. And we also mow, we lease a tractor during the summer months for 6 months. Utilities, there's the amount we're typically spending. Communications, so there's our computers and our software and fuel. So we have several vehicles at the airport. And that's our fuel budget for those vehicles. Union Pacific lease, there it is, 20,000. Professional services,
It says 37.6 on ours.
are you looking at 2024 or 2025?
We're looking at 24 in our
The
packet.
actual.
Okay, I'm on 2025, I don't. Education and training, we got 44,000, that's for the ARF training. This year, they have a full certification where it's a full week of training. Insurance, 18,000. Miscellaneous board travel, so this is for you guys, this is for your travel. If you want to go to a conference with us, this covers your travel, your hotel, your whatever expense is incurred there. And then Logan Fire standby fee for the ARF is at 8,000.
Ryan,
There's
did you
some
have a
questions
question?
here.
I was just gonna make a comment that there was the actuals above and the budget below, so I don't know whether they,
Okay, that's what I have for the budget. Little less prepared than I'd like to be, but we had a miscommunication with someone being sick, and here we are.
Thank you for that, Bob. Just for the board, are there any other questions you have about the budget or the financial report that you'd like our finance people to look into and bring back to us?
Ready for Annie.
Okay. All right, and if you do, at any time, talk to Bob or to me, and we can get that information for you. Thank you for that overview, Bob. While we're on manager's report, did you have anything else you needed to report to us?
I alluded to it, but we have hired a full-time employee, Casey. He came from our part-timer pool. He's about to graduate from the USU Airport Manager Program. So he's now full-time, doing a great job. And so that'll finish my report.
Okay, welcome, Casey.
Next, we've got Annie from Vector Flight Services on. She and I have had a couple Zoom conversations. She reached out to me. If you remember, about a year ago, we had Helena Glenn came and gave a presentation. This is the same company. Helena Glenn has moved on to other opportunities, and Annie got our file, and she reached out to me, and we started a discussion. So with that, I've asked her to attend electronically and give a presentation. I'd like to focus specifically on corporate landing fees, not flight schools or local tenants or anything like that. But she's put together a presentation on corporate landing fees, and so that's where we are now. Hi, Annie.
Hey, Bob, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, wonderful. Hi, everybody. My name is Annie Teixeira. I am Colorado-based, so I'm sorry I couldn't join the meeting in person. But as Bob mentioned, I am from Vector, taking over for Helena, and it's been a pleasure working with Bob. He wanted me to go over some revenue numbers with you. The way that we got this information before I present it to you is that the airport has an operations provider named Vertower that tracks all the operations to and from the airport. So what we did is we took some historical flight plans and operations, and we applied some landing fee scenarios to it. So I'm gonna go ahead and start sharing, and then we'll kind of walk through the thought process behind that. I'm not sure if it will let me. Yeah, it will. 1 second. Okay, you guys see this Excel document?
Janine, can you close out those two windows on the right, the one with that one and then this black one? Possible.
A little small, even with my glasses.
Can you see the yellow Excel
Yes.
document with headers?
Yes, we can see it. We're just trying to make it a little bit bigger on our side. We can't really read the numbers very well, but we can see the overall sheet.
Okay, let me help you. I'm going to zoom in as well. Probably the main things that we can focus on here can get a little bit bigger.
Janine, will you
Right here in this
maximize
window.
that overall window too?
Working on it. Oh, that's not gonna work.
As we get so zoomed in, it's hard to see it all at once. Okay, there we go. How's that? Can everybody read it?
Yep.
Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
Okay, so when Bob and I talked, like he mentioned, he had been working with Helena before, and I think there were lots of discussions around putting a landing fee with no weight minimum, more for revenue generating purposes, but there is a lot of things that come with that, including impact on traffic. So Bob and I were discussing some of the other landing fees in the Rocky Mountain region, and it's very common for airports to put in what we call like a corporate landing fee or a business.
Whoop, now you're gone. Now she's gone.
We lost you. We can't hear you now.
Hang on 1 second.
I think I hear the audio on the TV.
Looks like,
Yeah, what's
looks like
happening-
we hit mute.
Yeah, what happens is that for whatever reason, my controls keep skipping over to what is not, it's a different audio.
Yeah, if you hold on just a second, we're having a technical difficulty here.
I don't know what's going on here.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Now we can.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay. That's okay. What part should I go back to?
Maybe a couple sentences back.
Okay. So when I was working with Bob, we talked about some more common landing fees for the region, including billing what we call like business aviation or corporate aviation. There's a lot of reasoning for that, but it is commonplace amongst airports to bill based on a minimum weight. So looking at some of the aircraft manufacturers, when you're looking at corporate aviation, that minimum weight starts at about 5,000 or 6,000 pounds. And a good rule of thumb for why aircraft who are heavier should pay more in a landing fee is not just because of their ability and the
Popping into another.
Switching audio.
Yeah, it keeps switching.
We've lost you again, so you might want to pause if you can hear us.
For whatever reason, it keeps wanting to switch.
She's quite informative, we just can't hear her.
Try it again, Sean.
Can you hear us?
Yeah.
We lost you again, so one moment, please.
Why it's doing that? It keeps switching.
Just so you know, when we come back, the last thing we heard was about the 5,000 minimum.
5,000.
So while we're trying to get her back, maybe I can talk about some of the conversations that she and I had. She talked about the reason for this is it's hard on the run. The reason you want a landing fee is the higher in weight an airplane is, the more wear and tear there is on your runway. And she's created a couple scenarios there, one starting at 5,000, basically 6,000 pounds. And she's done some calculations on if, with the numbers of 2024, if we had had landing fees in place, what our grand total would be. And
Is that with netting out their fee or just the gross?
yeah, they take 22% there. So the top one there is not including the based aircraft. She's got it highlighted there. And then the second one is including based aircraft. So that would be Wasatch or anyone over the weight. So it wouldn't include flight schools or smaller aircraft that are based at our airport. But it's based on a weight limit. And you see their plane pass 22% fee there on each one. The first one is 6,427 would be their portion. The second one is 8,433 would be their portion. And then our portion at the end there is either 22,000 or 29 or basically $30,000. And that's based on, Annie, is that based on the 6,000 pound? Can you hear me? Okay.
You can sort of hear.
And that's at $3. So she's got the scenario at 6,000 pounds up to 15,000 pounds, it would be $3, and then from 15,000 up, it would be $4, and she's gotten those numbers based on what other airports in the region do, and come up with these numbers here. So in the last year, this is what we would have collected.
Janine,
Also, it's worth noting.
I think you need to switch the speaker back to the owl. I think it switched again.
It's worth noting a lot of these corporate companies land at other airports. It's not just Logan that they're landing at. They're landing at other airports. And 98% of the airplanes that have landed at our airport this last year that would qualify under this structure to pay a landing fee, 98% of them are paying landing fees at other airports already. They're already getting a bill from Vector for a landing fee. So if we adopted this, we would, our bill, Vector sends out one bill, and it's for all the landings for their month. And so our bill would be included in that. They would still be getting a bill, it would just include the landings that they did at Logan. And they're already paying it. So it's just, they would pay a little bit more to cover Logan's landing fee. Annie, did I cover that with a little bit of clarity, a little bit of accuracy?
Yeah.
Oh, she's back.
No, that was great, Bob. The one point that I think you guys missed when it cut out, can you hear me okay now?
We can.
Okay. I would also say that you mentioned that the heavier traffic, the corporate traffic, does cause more wear and tear on surfaces. And the other reason is, too, a lot of that category of traffic are fractional owners. And so these are the Part 135 operators that are like chartered, essentially, for hire. So they're trying to make quick turns. They're trying to come in, drop off, pick up, and leave. They're not always purchasing fuel. So a landing fee is a great cost recovery mechanism from these operators where you can't guarantee revenue when they visit the airport.
Great. Annie, would you talk about the option for, let's say someone doesn't want to pay for each landing, but they want to pay a monthly. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so let me show you, we'll lead into that. Here is a list of the top operators. It includes some of your based, but if you guys can see, this is an annual amount that they would have paid in 2024. So one option that Bob and I talked about is that as long as you make it fair and equitable to every operator, you can also offer like an annual landing fee program where anybody is welcome to pay a flat rate to the airport and then therefore be exempt from paying landing fees per arrival. They would, one time per year, and it would cover all of their landings. You just want to make sure that the way you structure that fee is, like I said, fair and equitable for everybody per the FAA, and it is available to all operators.
Okay.
Okay.
Are there any questions from the board so far, or what are you guys thinking?
So you said it was at 5,000 pounds, that's,
These numbers are on 6,000 and above.
tell me what, for visualization for some that may not be flying, and I don't fly that large of a plane, but what is the kind of plane that's different? Obviously, my Cessna is at 3,000, what fits
So you're,
6,000, where does the difference if you're visually looking?
she's got a list there of some weights. So basically, we don't really have much below 9,000. So a Pilatus is about 9,000 pounds.
So there's a fairly good gap between those, it's not like.
Yeah. And Annie also suggested, maybe we could start at 9,000 pounds, just for comfort of, just. Go ahead.
The reason why we recommend the 6,000 pound for business aviation is because there are some very light jets that come in at that weight impact on traffic. And we manage landing fees and user fees at over 100 airports in the US and Canada. And we have yet to find an airport that implements a landing fee above 6,000 pounds, and it's had an impact on traffic. We have seen airports implement landing fees below 6,000 pounds and impact traffic, but above 6,000 pounds, there has been no impact.
Okay.
So to be clear, Bob, what is the recommendation? I'm not clear, corporate aviation, but if it's based in Utah, or at LGU, I'm gonna use Craig Adams, for example.
Yeah.
He's flying out of here.
Mm-hmm.
That aircraft, the PC-12, is just over the 6,000. Is he exempt? Is he not?
So we have the option.
Electric exempt
Yep.
or not exempt?
We've run two scenarios. The first scenario that we showed was exempting based aircraft. The second, so this right here, the top one, it does not include based aircraft. The second one does. So you can see the difference there in our pocket is a difference of about $7,000 a year. We've run both scenarios with this anticipating this question, and that's the answer there. So
there is not a proposal before us at the moment. This is just a presentation, and then it will be asked of the board if we'd like Bob to return with a specific proposal and specific amounts and weights and who's excluded or not at our next meeting, perhaps, if we would like to consider that.
This hasn't been built into the budget that you just reviewed with us, correct?
no, this is not.
So
These are new numbers.
As the proposal comes forward to the board, would the proposal also include a timeline as to when it is expected to go active? Would
Yes.
that be at January 1 of 26 or sometime in 25?
I think,
I think because, so it's a loaded question. I only ask because I think of the businesses and, good stakeholder engagement, giving them kind of a heads up as to when to expect to start paying these kind of fees.
we haven't discussed necessarily when we would go live. We wanted to have the presentation. I know we did discuss if the timeline of, if, let's say we did just jump in and say to the beginning of next month, we go live. There's a data month where they collect the data. Annie, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a month where they collect the fee, and so the third month is when we would actually start receiving money for the first month. Is that accurate, Annie?
Yeah, and we have a very streamlined process for communicating landing fees. We've gone through this with other airports. So what we recommend is, like we mentioned, 98% of these revenue generating operators are already in our system. So we have contact information for them. So what we would provide to the airport is all the email addresses of people we think are going to be charged a landing fee when visiting the airport. We provide a template to the airport to draft a letter we ask the airport to reach out to them saying, these are the landing fees, they're going into effect. We have language that we want the airport to put on their website. We also have some of the aviation websites like AOPA, AirNav. We have contact information for them. We want that updated on the public websites. And then we also provide host and pilot lounges. So we do all of that 30 days before the fees would go into effect. So if the fees go into effect the first of the month, you really have 3 to 4 weeks of communication ahead of time. But then, as Bob mentioned, that first month, all of the operations at that point, nobody receives an invoice until 60 days after that communication started. Then they get their invoice, we start the collection process. 30 days after that is when we remit money to the airport. So whenever the airport pulls the trigger and says,
Okay. There's the presentation, so if you'd like, we can talk about it more, or?
Okay, to the board, Mayor, did you have a comment?
You know, I was just going to suggest, as far as formatting and discussing, right now we have action and discussion items listed together. Could in the future we maybe separate them? Because again, if it's just a discussion, then we should bring it back at a future meeting for an action and maybe even have some public comment on that. I think, again, it's a little hard with this group where it only meets once a month. With our county and city councils, we meet every 2 weeks. So again, you do a workshop where you discuss it and then a public hearing and take the action. And maybe we even need to, as a group, think about, for a while with a lot going on, do we need to meet every 2 weeks as an airport authority? Maybe we'd keep our meetings a little shorter, but again, I just, if people knew exactly what there was going to be action on and if they had an opportunity to comment, I think that would be helpful. So this is a great presentation. Let's put it on a future agenda, but maybe.
Well, I think though that we could give direction and say this is what we propose and give a timeline that could become part of that open discussion the next meeting.
Yeah, and it is a little confusing how it's agendized, and I apologize for that. It probably should have, it shouldn't have the word consideration in there because we don't actually have something to consider. But I agree with both of you. I would like us to put this on our next meeting agenda with a drafted resolution proposing.
So people know exactly what we're considering. We know exactly what we're considering.
So may I propose something?
Yes, please do.
I would propose that as the Airport Authority Board, we do institute landing fees, but we use the not including based landing fee number, and we implement it not earlier than July 1st of this year.
Okay, that's good direction for Bob on what to draft and bring back to us.
I think everybody needs to say yes, they agree with that.
Yeah, is there any other feedback, or does anybody have a different idea of what they'd like us to consider next time?
And then again, are we going to give the public an opportunity, should they choose to comment on that at the meeting before we make a decision?
Right.
So.
Yeah.
But it would be that proposal.
Okay, so anybody have concerns about any of that?
And the 6,000 and up, so.
Okay, 6,000 and up.
Okay, so next meeting, I will come with a draft resolution that we're going to implement landing fees at Logan Airport, non-based aircraft only, to begin July 1st, 2025. Is that what you want?
6,000 pounds and up.
6,000 pounds and up.
That is correct.
Did you hear that, Annie?
I got it, yep.
Okay.
Okay, and any other direction from the board?
And we're gonna have a public comment period on it. First is this agenda item, that's, so we're gonna have a
And
public
then
agenda
the
item.
board will actually vote on whether or not we choose to adopt it.
Is the resolution prescribing that we use Vector as the function of that? Is that one and the same, hand in glove kind of thing?
It would.
Or is it for an RFP kind of a
I
process?
don't believe there's
know how
another organization that does this sort of thing.
There is.
Do they all charge 22%? Do you know, Baron?
I don't, but I know there's multiple companies.
So maybe we need to do a little more homework first. That's a good point. Absolutely. I mean, as a county, I mean, I assume you have an RFP process that you go through. As a city, we do.
Yeah, we can do that simultaneously so that we'll have that in place by July 1st.
Thank
That
you
should be no problem to
whoever
have
brought
that.
up.
So if I can speak on that real quick, Utah has a statewide contract with Vertower, who's our data partner. So there is no other company. We have some sole source documentation on what we do and why we're the only one who fits this niche, but we are absolutely the only company that works with Vertower data. So if you were looking at other billing options, like other software that could generate invoices, things like that, or self-reporting systems, there are some of those. They wouldn't work with the existing data provider at the airport that's provided by the state of Utah.
And if we're on a state contract, then then they are essentially vetted. They've gone through that RFP process with the state. So at least at the city, if we use a contractor that's on the state contract, we're okay to just move ahead, so.
Yeah. We'll still look into it and see what the options are.
Okay. Annie, thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll be in touch.
Okay, I'm going to jump off. Have a good meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bob. We'll look forward to your presentation next time, and maybe if you could give us a report on options as well. And then that brings us to item 4B, consideration and approval of amended land lease agreement. You do have in your packet a red line version of the land lease agreement, and Bob and attorneys and staff and others have been working on this for many months now, incorporating feedback, including last meeting there was some additional feedback, I think, from Jeannie as well. And this version that is before you should include all of the feedback that has been received from the board thus far, and we're hoping that we're at the point of being able to hand over to Bob a completed lease agreement. However, if there are any additional changes you'd like to make today, that we can do that. So, yes, Mayor.
I have one question. On page 4, item I, it talks about the lease may not be assigned nor sublet without the prior written consent of the leaseor. They do have to get, again, prior written consent. Are we going to give preference to those on the waiting list? Because again, that's the procedure we've had. If someone new comes in, we have to go by our waiting list. But if someone is subletting their hangar, I mean, do we need to make sure that that goes through the waiting list process, or can they just sublet to anyone they want? That was the only question that came up that I emailed a couple of days ago.
I think those are two different ones. One being a property and one being building a hangar. One wants to construct and one wants to rent.
Okay.
So one wants to own and one wants to rent. So
Everybody's fine with that provision. I just wanted to raise it, but if everyone's.
That's my opinion, but I give it open to the others.
So do we have a waiting list for leasing as well, or just for building?
Just for building. And I believe it's, as of yesterday now, 14 deep. It's 14 people on the list to build.
All right, that was my one question, so thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
And that list is on the website, by the way. Thanks to Janine. Okay.
So,
Do we need to go
would you
with-
like to go over any of the most recent changes, or maybe just do a review?
Yeah,
I think we all have, like you say, the red line.
Just for the benefit of those that are here, the last item that was brought up was, were we going to charge for the entire lot or for the footprint of the hangar? And initially, we thought we were going to charge the entire lot. We've had some public feedback. We've listened to that. We have since changed to, we're just going back to the footprint of the hangar, but the rate is going to be 43 cents per square foot for the excuse me, for the hangar, and then 47 for flight line hangars.
And that was the suggestion that was made by Jeannie last time.
Yep.
I think that was her
Yep.
direction that everybody gave it
So-
on to.
So the old hangars that are there to the south, where they've got huge lots but small hangars, they were being unjustly targeted, and that was brought up from the community, from the public, because their rates were going up so high, sometimes triple their payment. And so we heard that, and we were just going to charge for the size of the hangar, but the rate is going to be similar to what other airports are charging, which is a 43 cents a square foot for those hangars and 47 cents for those that are on the flight line. So,
Do we have any obligation? Maintenance around is still the responsibility of the hangar owner, correct?
so we remove snow, but yeah, maintenance of the hangar and around the hangar is on the tenant.
So even if they're not being charged that square footage, they have to like keep the weeds down?
Yeah,
on the property?
yeah, they should, yep.
And they even do remove the snow on that area.
Yeah, so we'll come and we'll do the taxi lanes, but then they've got, some of them 20, 30 feet between their hangar door and the taxi lane, and they'll get that snow themselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it all hard surface?
Okay. Are there any other questions, suggestions, changes, concerns from the board on this lease document?
So then, Bob, one thing, Mr. Chairman, on the A, under section A, where we changed it, we had total hangar dimensions, then we changed it to total site.
Yeah.
You're saying you go back to the total hangar
Yep.
dimensions.
Yes, sir.
And then if anyone wants to rent any of that exterior space, we'll deal with that as a one-off.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
That would be my only suggestion, is just refer the lease back to the hangar
Yes.
site.
Good catch.
Thanks for catching that.
I do, Chair, I do believe in existing hangars, that this is fair for those existing hangars. I do think as we build new hangars and as we go into a new expansion, that being able to efficiently use the space and charging by site is appropriate as we move into new spots so that we can effectively use the limited space we have left. I get that doing it for the existing ones, because they can't change what they got. I get that, but going forward, there is things that can be done to effectively use the space that we have, and we probably ought to find ways to make sure that happens. And I don't know that that needs to be here, I just want to let you know that.
Well, I think maybe we could put an addendum that requires you to utilize X amount of a particular hangar site, for the actual hangar, so that you don't build a tiny hangar on a big site and then we lose all of that revenue. And we lose all that efficiency of what we have left.
I mean, several of the ones we have in the master plan, some of them have parking lots. So they're kind of using extra space beyond the footprint of the hangar. If you go out to the airport now, you'll see several vehicles parked next to them, or a trailer, or equipment that's adjacent to a hangar. There's quite a bit of the land that we have out there that is being used for other purposes, in addition to just the footprint of the hangar. So, I mean, I think it just, at that point, we ought to find a way, whatever that might be, whatever the mechanism might be, to effectively use a limited amount of land that we have.
Do you feel that the older hangars that are sitting on larger lots are being utilized, the space is being utilized for something non-aviation?
Some of them,
Some of them, sure.
So do we need to enforce that?
yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, there's several where there's a, and this one's been addressed, but there was a car on a trailer parked there. There's others where they will park a vehicle between hangars. So yeah, there's definitely some room for improvement there. Also, to your point, Ryan, of wanting to use the entire lot, John Kern and I were down at Spanish Fork Airport recently, and they have what's called a zero lot line. And so basically, hangars go right to the edge of the lot, and the next hangar goes to right to the edge of the lot, which means they share a wall, and they have to follow code, so they have double walls to prevent fire from spreading. So maybe we could encourage future tenant, future hangar to have a zero lot line, go right to the edge.
Twin home kind of gets built, twin homes do that. That's a very common construction mechanism, rather than having 10 foot on every side. So then you have 20 foot between, and you're looking at a 50-foot hangar. You lose 20 foot every time, you've lost the hangars.
Yeah,
And it's limited space. So anyway, I realize that it's difficult to change what's there. So I support what's here at this point. But I do think we should find effective means and encourage, that twin hanger mechanism, or encourage things that would.
Perhaps
promote
we is it our code that dictates that, Holly?
That's a good question.
And so we can begin to work through that with Logan City
Okay,
to eliminate those, to create that tightness in the new lots, and that will alleviate, we won't have to change the lease because it will be, if you have a lot, you gotta build a hangar all the way across it.
there you go.
I'm open to ideas and spots. I just think we need to make sure that we have a limit amount. We have 14 on it. We have, so we have a waiting list. We have certainly interest in new hangars. But if we don't effectively use that space, we won't
Yeah.
have as many as we can. And there's a lot of traffic and a lot of people.
I
that
will
want
say
that.
several of the people that are on the waiting list want large hangars,
Great.
so.
Well, and how much of that is going to be dictated by our master plan? Shouldn't we, on our master plan, say, in this area, we're going to build this many hangars of this size?
This is the next layer down from the master plan. So the master plan will cover at a 30,000 or a 20,000 foot view, but this is your 5,000 foot view. Or
Ground level.
ground level view. So no.
And
The answer to
zoning-
that question is no, that the master plan will only get you to so far of this is usable space. This is the general idea of what we want, but the actual layout won't come at a master plan level.
And the zoning will help with that, with setbacks and stuff.
Yeah, go ahead.
With the master plan, Brian is exactly right. It definitely is that high-level view, but it also does address, you don't want a small hangar built in a large hangar location. The master plan does represent the potential for more than doubling the amount of hangars out on the airport if it's completely built out. But depending on where you are on the airport, there are going to be some that are Group 1 aircraft. Those are going to be your Cessnas, your general aviation aircraft. And those areas on the master plan graphically represent smaller hangars. So kind of that couple thousand, 5,000 square foot hangars. There's Group 2 type aircraft, which is what the runway is built to handle. The corporate type jets, and those have on the master plan representing 100 by 100, 200 by 100 foot hangars, very large hangars. So that's the level that 5,000 or that 10,000 foot view does differentiate. This potential future taxi lane is designed to handle large aircraft. And then at the local level, it definitely says it's up to the board to say, I'm sorry that large area is built, but it's not for putting in a 1,500 square foot hangar. That could work well over on this other future development area, but that's exactly what it is. It's the 10,000 foot view of laid out for large / corporate, small / general aviation.
And then we put setbacks on top of that, and so if
Exactly.
we put 0 setbacks, then that,
Okay. Okay, that's an excellent point, Ryan, and perhaps this is a good discussion for a future agenda. Bringing it back to the lease agreement that is before the board right now, are there any other concerns, changes?
Just a question on Bravo 3. It's an inflationary adjustment. It notes the cost of living going up by at least the Social Security increase. In my world, the Social Security increase is far less than what CPI or the Consumer Price Index typically is. And I worry that the nomenclature used would be indicative or give somebody that reads it perhaps a lower expectation than what we as staffing will likely incur as in inflationary adjustments. And maybe that could just be worded slightly differently to either say CPI or some sort of local market inflationary index.
It could also read that at the beginning of each year, the board would set the rate increase. Whatever, based on, you'd gather that information, or I would, and present it to you, and then you could decide what the rate increase is for the year.
Yeah, I had a similar concern, Sean, and I like your suggestion, Sean, but I do read this, the way I read it is the board sets what that is, and we've set a minimum, but we haven't set a maximum. And that's something that we can change from year to year. I like your suggestion, though, of changing it to CPI at least, because I was a little worried about that. Does anyone have any other thoughts about CPI versus?
The issue with CPI becomes that you can take that as the national CPI, the Western index of CPI, the Western index of the garbage driver of CPI. If you're going to go to the CPI, I think you need to define which level of that CPI, because there is 20 different levels of CPI that you can choose. The Social Security one is a national level that's a flat. It is nationwide, and there is only one level at which that's done. So if you're going to do it, I'm great with that. I just think you need to define at which level that is, whether that's the Mountain West Region CPI or for non-agricultural, or what that is, because that definition of CPI is insufficient.
I actually love what Ryan's saying, and it speaks to the undertone of why I brought up anything, because I feel like this sets an unrealistic expectation if we're going to look to be self-sustaining as a board for the airport. Social Security increases are not going to match what we will face in the real labor market locally. And so there's even, my interpretation, a little bit of ambiguity in saying at least the Social Security, and what kind of precedent are we looking to set on a regular basis annually? So.
I think one of the problems is we have some years that we haven't had any increase. And so this is saying, hey, there's at least a minimum increase on rents. We are at, what are we at currently before this change?
22 cents a square foot.
Cents. We're doubling it because we haven't been able to keep up. And how many years over that last 20 years have we not had an increase at all? Do we know?
Had 2% every year.
Every year. So at that point, if it's truly been 2% every year, then 20 years ago it was free. I mean, almost. If it's at 21 cents now, I argue that 21 cents has not been increased. I can tell you 10 years ago that 21 cents was the market rate, and I think that 21 cents has not gone up. If we go back to the numbers, it may have been, but I doubt it, that 10 years ago when I started with leases out in Roosevelt, they were that in Logan then. So I can tell you that there has been years that we don't see any, and we need to make sure that if we're going to keep up at all, we got to have some type of minimum, whatever that is. We got to have some type of minimum, whether it's 2%, 3%, 5%, whatever. Let's set a minimum.
So that's at the discretion of the board. We have a proposal in the lease. Would the board like to change that benchmark or leave it as is?
So I would assume, but I don't know if I'm correct, that the lessor and the lessee agree that the rent due under this agreement shall be increased by at least the Social Security cost of living percentage per year. Is that determined by this board? Or is it just?
Well, maybe as I think Bob mentioned, maybe we need to be a little bit more clear there and say something like, as determined annually by the board.
I would say, I would change the at least to at minimum, the Social Security cost of living percentage per year as determined by the Airport Authority Board.
Could we say as determined, well, does it say annually already in there?
Well,
Per year, and
it says per year.
July
Oh, yeah,
1st.
it says per year. Okay. Yeah, I like that. Okay, so we have,
We'll take out at least and put at minimum.
Yeah, just minimum under instead of least.
Okay. What other addition did you
Brett's
have?
suggestion under item A that it goes back to total site or total hangar dimensions.
Yep.
okay.
Okay.
We have a couple of suggestions for changes. Are there any other changes that board members would like to propose before we consider adoption of this lease agreement?
And you did add by the board, right, Jeannie?
By
As
air-
determined by the Airport Authority Board
Right.
after the per year.
So I would move approval of this lease agreement with the changes as discussed in this meeting.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion for approval of the lease agreement with the changes that have been discussed in this meeting. Is there a second? Okay, we have a second from John. Thank you for that motion and second. Is there any further discussion before we vote? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. So, Bob, get to work. You got a few people in line who want to sign leases, so thank you for
We
that.
do. Quick question. During the process here, we approved a lease. You guys said, go ahead, and I assigned one person under that lease, which was to charge them the whole lot fee. Am I okay to re-sign them under the new lease and rip up the old one or put it in the file and say, this one supersedes it, so it's fair to that person?
If they're okay with it, we're okay with it.
It's gonna lower their bill significantly, so,
Sure, they'll be okay with it.
yeah. But I wanted to address that.
Our guest gal said that for the FAA, we needed to have equity. Would we not need to do that anyway under that kind of revenue scheme?
Right, I just wanted to
Maybe.
be transparent on what I think should happen.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah. Does
okay.
anyone have a concern with Bob doing that? Okay.
I think we defined it as the one that was during the conversation as we were working on this.
Yeah,
If we start to domino much.
he'll be
then it
happy when I
opens up-
call him today.
It opens up the potential, but I want to just limit the precedence to that one.
Can we make a strong effort to not have uses beyond aviation around?
I'm
this
right
lake?
there with you, Janine. It's high on my priority list.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Thanks, Bob.
thanks.
Okay, that brings us then to item 4C on our agenda, consideration of Utah State University contribution and participation. And Brett, we have you on the agenda to give a report on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for the board's benefit, the mayor, our chairman, and myself have been meeting with Utah State University, and they are very supportive at the executive level up there. The main contact has been had with David Calley, their finance director, and it's not really their aviation school related discussions yet. Those are still coming. The main conversations that we've been having is regarding the Part 139 expenses and what the university has agreed to do. And he needs final approval, but he believes he has a good indication that they're good to go. He's been signaled that way. We walked through, John, I think you and Bob went through and identified the cost of that 139, not just going forward, but what did we expend out of our funds during 2024? And what Mr. Calley agreed to, we went through those expenses that we've already paid for, and they will reimburse us for those. The Pappy Light move, we don't know how much that's going to, if it's required, and then if so, how much that is. So we've set that off to the side. The striping, we've set that off to the side. And so we will deal with those. What they proposed is that we cover, they will reimburse us for the cost of the one-time expenses for last year. That was about $116,000. They would cut us a check for that. That's the windsock, that's the ARF, some training there, or ARF replacement, truck repairs of $25,000, et cetera. Then the annual 139 expenses, they've agreed to pay for those. For example, the full-time employee help contribute towards that, and the part-time people, that's $130,000. They'll fund us for that right now. And then the recertification for the ARF was done last year, so this year, Bob, I think you mentioned it's going to be the full certification, which is $40,000. They're willing to front that as we go. So what they're suggesting is they're going to reimburse us for last year's ARF training, the $30,000, and then the $40,000 as it's due, they'll contribute those additional funds for this year. So they're proposing for salaries and last year's ARF, another $130,000 there. So the total of it, that's $160,000. So really about $275,000 is what the university is proposing they will contribute today towards those expenses that we've incurred for the 139. And then they will deal with us, as there's been some conversations about having them be part of the board. Once they have that visibility into these other things, that's all they're looking for, to be able to anticipate the future expenses coming up, and will help participate in that as well. So as we met as a subcommittee, we felt like that's a very reasonable approach. The university feels good about that. And so our proposal is we would move forward in invoicing that, or whatever we need to do, get those dollars in now, and then work closely with the university as we go forward on those additional costs that we're going to incur. Any concerns, comments, suggestions?
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah, I just would like to thank you, Brett. You mentioned that a couple of the rest of us were involved, but you're the one who carried most of the load on this, did most of the negotiating and the work on it. I really appreciate the excellent outcome of your discussions and negotiation.
The university is a great partner, and we appreciate what they do. And this was a very easy conversation to have, because they appreciate what we're bringing to the community. So we need to continue to support them.
And they've indicated a long-term interest, so again, maybe at the next meeting, we can bring back some discussions to have in public with the board on, we would really need to change our original operating agreement to allow additional board seats for the university. So we should have that discussion again.
So,
begin as a discussion item.
So that's an excellent point, Mayor. What the university has said is that they are willing to come to the table, they are willing to contribute in a healthy amount. They see the value of the airport, they're supportive, they want to be engaged. And one of the ways that they would like to be engaged is they would like to have a seat or two on this board. As Mayor Daines just mentioned, the only way we can do that is to change the interlocal agreement between Cache County and Logan City, and each of those councils, the Logan Municipal Council and the Cache County Council, would each have to vote to authorize modifying that agreement to add an additional seat. So if that's something we would like to do, we can put that proposal on our future agenda and consider that. But I'm curious how the board feels about that, about adding another seat or two.
Well, I do know that when we paid for an evaluation of the airport, one of the things they said was that the Airport Authority Board needed to be more, shall I say?
Aviation focused.
Yeah, aviation focused and more quote-unquote professional. And I think that having a representative from USU is an important part of that.
And if we're concerned about the board getting too big, which is a valid concern, we could talk about restructuring, how many the county and city appoint. So again, we could change our appointees too, but we need to have some discussion on how we want to handle that, so.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
As a housekeeping item with what with what Brett brought forth, a couple of accounting needs, Wes, I see needing to come to the board. One, is this cash or accrual basis if they're going to reimburse us for 24 costs?
So I would just say, Sean. Again, we haven't closed out our books for the year, so I'm assuming that's a timing issue.
And with that in mind, I was just thinking for transparency with the board, bringing that back to fully close out the books. But then it sounds like there's a budget adjustment also needed for 25.
Well, and there will be audited financials too. This fund also gets audited just like the rest of the funds in the county. So we do have audited financial statements for it. I appreciate the board talking about fees and the airport. I would just encourage them to keep in mind the capital needs that are there and make sure you address your revenue needs tied in with those capital needs that you'll have in the future.
Okay, thank you. So,
Sean, to your, I'm sorry, to your point, I think that's going to be a windfall in 2025 where the university hasn't committed to it in '24. So I think it'd be, we're not gonna push it, I wouldn't see us pushing it back to '24 financials, even though it's related to last year's expenses.
Yeah.
Because our commitment isn't until this year from the university, so it'll show a little, it's gonna look a little wonky, but that's okay,
Yeah.
so.
And really, that's just to set up a domino towards a conversation of what would we do about deferred maintenance, perhaps, when we have those additional revenues.
Exactly.
And I guess one of the questions is, going forward, should we have some type of a written policy or written agreement with the university that makes clear what the expectation is as far as their financial participation?
Yeah, and they're happy to, they've signaled they're happy to do something like that.
Okay. So if you'll all think about that, we will put something on our next agenda about adding a seat. What we would be doing is we would be adopting a recommendation that we would then take to each of those councils, the county and Logan City councils, asking them to modify it for us. So if you'll think about that, we do have 2 more seats, 2 more chairs, I guess, available on this dais. So we could fit up to 2 more people. That's something to consider too. We have 7 voting members of this board. If we added 1, then we'd have 8, which would be an even number, which could potentially be problematic. But there are ways to address that too. So if you'll think about that, we'll put it on the agenda for next time. But it sounds like, I haven't heard any opposition to that concept.
Conversation.
Would it make them a fiduciary as equally liable as the county and city for all ongoing costs or suits?
It depends how we structure the agreement, I guess. If we're just giving them a seat, I would say no, but if they became a party to our interlocal agreement, then maybe. And that's a really good question, because that's something we should consider, is at what level are we bringing them in? Are we bringing them in as an actual partner agency, or are we just saying that they get a seat on the board? Because there's a difference.
I mean, if they continue to put in that level of a contribution, it's more than either the city or county is putting in. But again, being the governmental entities, you know.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, we'd have to check with our attorneys about the Interlocal Cooperation Act and see if it's even possible for us to partner with a university. I know cities and counties can partner, but I'm not sure if that state law extends to universities.
There is a little difference between the county and the city, because they are users as opposed to being sponsor. And so their contribution is reimbursement for expenses, whereas the contribution from the county and the city is because we are
service providers?
We are service providers.
And owners.
The FAA, the FAA calls it the sponsor. That's their legal term.
Okay.
In terms of ownership, the county and the city signed a quitclaim deed. They have no ownership.
Yeah, the airport authority is the owner.
Is the owner.
Yes, yes. Okay, so we'll bring that back, and that brings us down to item 4D on our agenda, and we have Scott Weaver here. And actually, item D and E are both Scott. Item D is an update on the FBO facility expansion, so if you'll talk about that first, Scott, and then we'll talk about the fuel tank.
Hey, Scott, may I have you hold just 1 second? Do I need any kind of approval to move forward with the university to have them cut those checks? Is there anything required by the board, approval of any type, or do I just give them the signal, those are the amounts, let's go with it?
Anybody have a concern with us accepting that money?
I mean, you could run it by the county attorney, but,
I'm not aware of anything, yeah.
An invoice from the
yeah,
county?
do they need an invoice from us? Because they kind of want to operate on a reimbursement basis, correct?
That would probably be the cleanest way for us to prepare an invoice that lays out what the expenses are, what they're for, and what the amounts are. I like that.
So we can work with Wes to, maybe Wes slipped out, but,
Yeah.
oh, there you are behind,
That's
sorry.
great. You and I will chat right after.
I need to sneak out to another meeting, but can we just connect via email?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll find you, Wes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks for that follow-up. Scott?
Well, thank you for having me back. FBO terminal, currently we've had on hold, working to try to get a lease so we can get into the planning. But it sounds like that's changed, so we'll start working with Bob and hopefully get that resolved and move forward.
That was it?
Okay, so.
Yeah, on the update,
I think one of the other questions I heard from board members was, have you started any of the process with getting approvals from the city or building design, anything like that?
tried, but they won't allow us to apply without a lease.
Okay, okay, so the point you're at is you're waiting for the lease.
Stuck.
We can now get a lease in place for approval, and then you'll
And
start that.
we're not, we're being patient, and honestly, we're hoping interest rates drop, so it's okay.
Okay.
With regard to interest rates, did you indicate to me that you have received preliminary financing?
Yes.
approval?
Yes.
They've gone through your financials, business plan?
The building is going to be guaranteed by my parents, and so there's no issues there. The fuel farm, I did get pre-approved through my local bank.
Okay.
Okay, so.
Next subject.
So, yeah, that's the next subject. Are there any other questions about the FBO expansion?
Just one thing, when I was speaking with the university, they circled back with me a couple of times expressing their interest in supporting Mr. Weaver's proposal for the USU teams going in and out of there and the visiting teams coming in through there. So I've exchanged their contact information. As an airport board, we kind of stay out of that. That's in Scott's hands now, but that's a good signal.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
They're very anxious to help out. So.
Okay. Any other questions on the FBO expansion? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on then to item E, which was a request for reconsideration of installation of self-fueling storage tank.
Yes, so we were in the process of getting architectural drawings, engineering drawings for a self-service system. At the time, it was going to be a smaller 2,000-gallon tank. What brought this on us was the fuel farm and the age of the fuel farm. And I was working with John and Bill, and then John wanted to see if there was additional funding out there with the FAA or the state. So we held off on our project. And what I've heard is there is no funding. And so coming to you to see if we can continue the process and put in a 15,000-gallon self-serve avgas tank.
Does that mean adjusting the lease at all or not the lease?
We would need a lease for the area the tank would go on.
Okay.
Because it would be on the south end of the ramp if I'm.
And I think in the information that came out to board members, it was an area that was designated by the master plan. So is the proposal in line with what the master plan will propose?
I am not familiar with where the proposal exactly calls it out, but the master plan does lay out a self-service fuel area on the south end of the apron.
We'd worked with the FAA ADO, and that's where they told us that the only place it would work for them.
Okay, that's just what I wanted to confirm.
Did you work with them for the 2,000-gallon tank or the?
So we previously
2,000
tried to put in self-serve back in 2006, but long story, we don't need to go there.
John, you're the institutional memory. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this proposal.
I'm all for it.
Great. Okay.
It's always just been a funding issue.
How much do you think this project would cost?
Around $500,000.
But you're just doing that as a business expense, and then you'll generate the revenue from selling the fuel, correct?
Yes, there's one, labor is getting expensive. As Aaron knows, the price of fuel is going up. That would eliminate, on the avgas especially, we can bring costs down, be more competitive with the surrounding airports because they all have self-serve. Second reason is the fuel farm tanks are not getting any younger. We're 50 plus years now. I don't even know how long those tanks last, which certainly don't want any failures because that would be a nightmare for everybody.
And what size tank are you proposing?
15,000.
put one tank for 15,000 or split into two?
One tank for the avgas. We currently have a 12,000 gallon tank that we purchased last year on the, I guess, forget his name, Malouf's property or hangar.
For the Jet A, is that?
Is Jet A, yes.
I have some thoughts on this one for the board, and I think, I mean, obviously, I'd be a user of that, and I support having a self-serve storage tank. I'm a supporter of that. Having operated an airport and an FBO with that airport, I can tell you that the experience I've had is the largest revenue at an airport is your sale of fuel. At this point, along with Dr. Jones' report, it talks about the sale of fuel and that this is probably your largest revenue generator, and to have just a land lease would be unfortunate. Fortunate use. I would see if the board is interested, and I don't know whether Wes is interested, but I think this is a great opportunity for a public-private partnership that we participate in the cost of the construction and split the revenue that would potentially come, one that might offset his, and would also entail us into one of the largest revenue sources at the airport. And I don't know whether you're willing to engage in a partnership of that manner, but I think that there is some definite considerations when we talk about this fund. This is how we move forward with financial independence, and it's a big deal. So I can tell you that 74 Victor, which is Roosevelt's airport, they paid for 100% of their O&M out of their FBO fuel, self-serve fuel. That's the 100% of their O&M was covered by that.
And the FBO was?
Roosevelt was the FBO. The city was the FBO. They operated the FBO.
So John, give us some history on that, because a long time ago, again, we had a contract with, Leading Edge to be the FBO. I mean, they do the labor. I mean, again, we have none of the hassles nor insurance nor anything. We also don't get the revenue. So what are your thoughts?
The FAA requires that we maintain minimum standards, which ultimately they have to approve our set of minimum standards. And the minimum standard spells out who can engage in fuel sales. And so for us to do that, we'd have to relook at our minimum standards, resubmit them to the FAA for approval.
Well, and do we really have any funds to invest at this point? I mean,
We just got a reimbursement from USU.
seen the check yet, don't spend it.
Yeah.
So I think that from a revenue standpoint, it makes some sense. But from an operational standpoint and a FAA approval standpoint, it requires going through some hoops.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, so that's not an easy answer.
Didn't Dr. Jones suggest that we just do this all on our own?
Yes.
Right. But do we want to hire all those employees? I mean, do we really want to do this?
So Mayor, in all respect of what we're talking about, time frame of what the employee is to do a self-serve fuel farm. So we're talking about a self-serve fuel farm that is automated in its, what you do is you pull up your plane, the pilot takes it out, fuels up. So what we're talking about is a construction project of building it and a daily testing of fuel. We're talking less than an hour a day of time in total to operate this. Not to oversimplify, but we're talking about probably potentially daily testing, and that's the extent of, I mean, and ordering in the volume of fuel, which will, I mean, this size of fuel farm will have an automated telling how much the level of that is and bringing in a truck. This is not the same operation as a full-service delivery truck of doing
Why don't we
that.
ask Scott to bring us back a projection of both revenue and expense, investment, and then the board would have full information to consider that.
But he only has full service at this point. That's the level which he has is full service, not a self-serve side. To give comparison of what we're talking about.
So I guess let's clarify a couple of things. Dr. Jones, in his recommendations, recommended that we just do this on our own. What's being proposed is that a private entity do it separate, all on their own, separate from us. But Ryan, what you're proposing is that perhaps we find some middle ground and do a partnership.
Some middle ground.
Where maybe we participate in some way in this, in the fuel sales. Of course, the private entity would have to be willing to partner with us on that.
Well, I feel we are partners right now.
Okay, great.
And we've tried to get the airport to buy the tank and allow us to operate and lease it and so on and so forth.
Okay.
But I keep being told there's no funding.
Okay.
I'm happy to entertain any offers you have. And there's not a lot of money in avgas, to be frank. I mean,
Ownership of the facility, of the tanks by the airport has some benefits for the future.
Well, it certainly takes the liability off me for any fuel
And it answers
issues.
the question of what happens when you go down the road.
Yeah,
So
I agree.
So, okay, Kirk had some suggestions on information he'd like to see
I
come
think
back.
maybe we should ask Kirk and Sean to kind of meet with Scott and just have some discussions and come back and give us a report in a month.
I like that idea. I'd like Bob and maybe Ryan even to be part of that discussion if you'd be willing, Ryan. I like that idea. Okay, any other suggestions from the board on this? What you'd like to have come back?
Are you working on any kind of a timeline, Scott? I mean, are you?
It's a matter of getting the approvals, and, I mean, I've been pre-approved for the financing. I've got engineer working on drawings. We could put it in as early as this summer.
So can I perhaps designate Kirk just maybe as the contact person to get everybody together to set up a meeting just so it
Doesn't
happens?
languish?
Thanks, Kirk. Okay, all right, let's do that. Thank you. We'll look forward to the update on that.
Thanks.
That
Thanks, Scott.
brings us down to item F, 4F, Master Plan Status Update. Judd?
Give you a quick update of a couple of things, and we'll keep it to under 5 minutes. So first, I want to introduce Anthony Congram. So you want to go up and say hi?
I'm Anthony, engineer from Wagner. I just moved here from Colorado, so yeah, excited to work with you all.
So you just moved to Logan or Utah or say, okay.
So he's been with our company for a couple of years, and so we're just excited to have him over here in Salt Lake, based out of our Salt Lake office with Connor. And so, yeah, but he'll be working as a design engineer on some of your upcoming projects. So let him come up and say hi. Then as far as the airport master plan, we are wrapped up with it. The technical advisory committees had it for a little bit of time to provide any insights or any last minute, hey, what about this? And we're basically at the point where we can say it's wrapped up. The final local step is to do a public open house, and it really is set up such that we'll come and set up some easels, have big visual representation of the airport layout plan, and we will be here just to be able to answer any possible questions that could come up from the public. Earlier, before the meeting, it was recommended for a time of that, maybe the last week of March, the second half. I think that's the 25th, 6th, 7th?
26th, 27th, 28th.
25th, yep. And so we'll that was put out as a potential, this could be a potential location, possibly out at the airport is a great, it's always best to do it out at an airport. If there's a place that can be found to host it, generally speaking, we schedule those for about 2 hours. But we're basically there for as long as people need us to answer whatever questions that they have. Once that's done, we will hit send to the FAA for their final review.
Okay, so I love that idea of doing an open house. With those proposed dates of 26th, 27th, or 28th of March, does anyone see conflict with those dates? We don't all necessarily have to be there. It's not an airport meeting. It's a public open house. It'd be great if we could be there to listen to input from users and participate, but we're not necessarily required to be there at that. But does anyone see any conflict with those dates?
The
26th, March 26th, 27th, or 28th. It would just be one of those evenings, probably.
Yeah. Any time of day can work for us. We will make it work. So what time, date, and place is what works for you?
I would say the 28th is probably the best day for me.
Okay, that's a Friday, right?
Yep.
Okay.
I'll be out of the country. But just as a thought, I don't know whether Scott's they're willing, but they have the fly-in on the 8th, and a lot of those pilots attend that, a very good event, and to be able to have boards and be able to be there, the same thing might be a nice thing.
The 8th of?
8th of March.
March 8th?
I think it's the second Saturday.
It's a Saturday?
Yeah, we'll start those back up in March.
Okay. I just think they're great, and to bring out a lot of those that are interested, are already present and there.
That does have a conflict with the Spring Utah Conference, which ends on the 7th, so I just think that will hurt
Then
with.
maybe the April 12th would, I don't know, anyway, just as a.
Would April 12th be the next day that would happen? The second Saturday? The second Saturday? Yeah, that's the second Saturday.
Well, and you mentioned that conference. That's the reason we have item 5 on the agenda, discussion about our March board meeting, because our normal board meeting will conflict with that conference, and a lot of people may be gone, so we'd wondered about moving that meeting to the following week. So I'm jumping ahead, but sorry.
So what time on the 12th is the fly-in, from when to when? 8 to 10 in the morning? And if we did it at 10 o'clock on that Saturday?
I think that could work. I need to double check on the Saturdays for some of the staff availability. But with that timeline,
I like that concept. It would also be nice, I do think, obviously we could hold it in this room, but I do think it would be ideal to host it at the airport. And we'd need to find somebody with a nice.
Do you have a space?
Yeah, we'd need to find somebody with a nice hangar, plenty of space that's easily accessible, who'd be willing to host that. So we could have some discussions maybe between now and then and see if there's somebody who'd be willing to host it.
That may be something you could do at Cache Valley Electrics, where you've got the parking lot right
Yeah,
there.
that would be ideal. Thank you. Okay. Okay, that sounds great. We have a couple things in the works for that, and we look forward to an update on that. Any other updates on the master plan?
On master plan, no. And then otherwise, we're cranking forward on upcoming engineering projects for the year, which include taxiway Charlie, redoing that. That'll probably look more towards mid to late summer construction. Kilo, a new taxi lane, and then working towards snow removal equipment, but that probably won't actually show up or be delivered. They're usually in the 12 to 18 months is the delay nationwide for SRE right now, snow removal equipment.
Okay. Okay.
Paint will be happening of the runway as soon as weather permits in the spring, although it could have been this last week. But,
that would have been good. Okay, any other updates?
That's it for
Okay.
brevity.
All right, thanks, Judd, I appreciate that. That takes us to item 4G, tower repair update. Bob?
Yeah, I've asked Casey, my full-timer, to go over these bids.
So Bob introduced me earlier. I'm Casey. I started off at the airport as a part-time employee, but was recently hired full-time.
I believe the board was given a list of the bidders and their proposals. For everyone here, we had 3 proposals. One was from Raymond Construction. For the tower repair, they quoted $90,000, $90,465, excuse me. And they were the only ones that submitted a proposal for the demolition, which was about $70,000. Sorensen and Nem Construction proposed $107,000 for the tower repair, and Paul Davis proposed $32,000 for the tower repair. Paul Davis did come in significantly cheaper than everyone else, and that was also under our budget that we allotted for that. So
again, where it was so different, I mean, the materials, they had to itemize. Some of the
Yeah.
big ticket items were so different. I'm wondering if we're comparing apples to apples.
They were all given the same specifications and details to bid from. And I don't know on the other 2, but I know that Paul Davis went in the tower and on at least one occasion, probably multiple occasions, I think Bob and I were there to watch them. I know that they were on site and have been through it. And they do have a state contract for doing this type of work. So I think they're aware of what they're trying to get into, and their office is within a mile of the airport. So not a surprise to them.
So I guess the other question is, you know, the bigger question is, do we want to move ahead with restoration? Or given our new, you know, our master plan and the expansion of the FBO and potential parking, I mean, again, I'm not out at the airport all the time. You guys are the experts. But do we want to restore the tower, or do we need that space? Would it be just, do we want to preserve the history, or do we want to use the space for kind of future projects?
I like the preserve the space. We have a grant that covers the budget. We have a 6%, I don't know what 6% of this number, 6 or 7% of this number is. We can calculate that, but for a fairly cheap price, we can use the grant to cover what we're at. If this is 30, what did you say it was,
$32,132.
Again, I'd lean towards tearing it down. I mean, again, I'm one opinion, one vote, but I just think as our airport moves forward into kind of the next stage in a master plan, but again, I'm not the pilot out there. I totally acknowledge that.
My vote would be that we proceed with a low bid. It probably costs us about $2,500 we use the grant for the rest, and then we still have part of that grant left to be able to put a mural and artwork out there to make that as an entry item. It's not going to be very much space to be able to use. I don't think our master plan put any kind of items there. And I think it's just a kind of a memory to show our history.
Is the intention with the bids to make it so that the public can go up into the tower?
No.
Not at this time, I believe.
Would you remind us from whom we received the grant and what amount?
Grant was from FAA Beautification, and it was 45?
From UDOT, and for beautification. And I believe it's the largest beautification grant that they've given. And it was given specifically for the restoration of that preservation of that historic tower. It's not available for any other purpose.
If we have, if we're only going to spend $32,000 and we have a grant for $45,000, can we expand our scope in some way?
Yes.
Using that?
I think we could come back and put a mural on it or some type of exterior. But at this point, it is cleaning, drying it in, and making it so that it's not the eyesore it is today.
Yeah, my phone periodically pops up memories, photographs from years past, and it popped up the other day from 2 years ago. It reminded me of the day that we went and toured the gutted, messy, windows blown out building, and I thought, has it really been 2 years that it's been sitting there with the windows open and the weather exposed to it? I do think we need to move forward. I appreciate everybody and the work that you've done. So is there a recommendation from the board or a motion for what we'd like to do with these bids?
Mr. Chairman, I hear, Mayor, what you're saying. There, what does this saddle us up? If it truly is $35,000, or whatever that number is, I'm great with retaining it, and we'll just figure out that space and how we work around it in the master plan. I think there's some legacy there that has a good feeling for people. I struggle when I see a bid come in where their entire bid is less than just the glass of the other two.
That's my question.
And I do not, I need 100% confirmation, Casey. The reason Bob had you do this so we can blame you. You know that, right?
I can take it.
Welcome to the board. But what we need to do in 100% fairness to everyone, we can't go down a slippery slope where, oh, well, that glass was, we didn't think it was going to need that rating or whatever. I have a hard time. We are outbid a lot, and I can see that they're being outbid. Their bid is less than my materials, and then it's change order after change order after change order, and we need to be really cautious. If Paul Davis can do it, I'm great with it, and you guys have done a great job getting that grant. To me, I would propose we move forward with that.
Ryan, perhaps an explanation. Ryan and I have been over their proposals, and our take was that the two high ones were non-responsive. We indicated in the spec that Ryan prepared that the broken glass would be replaced with the same kind of tempered glass that is there currently in the existing frame. Both of the high bids proposed completely taking out all of the framing and everything and putting in 4-inch glass walls. They were non-responsive to the specifications that they were provided. And every indication is that Paul Davis responded specifically to the request that we had submitted to them.
Would that be according to code, John? I'm not sure what code would require in a hangar tower. I appreciate us telling them what we want, but is that up to code?
That's a really good question, because what's there was broken by the wind. So I do think if we're going to replace the glass, that we should at least have somebody look at it, check the code, make sure that we're not just replacing glass in a setup that's going to break again.
Well, as a contractor, he's responsible for meeting code. He'll have to get the building permit. He will have to go through that process.
That's right, and go through the inspections.
Yeah, I just don't want them to come back, because we've had others that said, hey, you bid it off, you deal with it.
I think that's good direction to our staff to verify, do they have a bid from some glass company to do that, and make sure they just didn't make up that number, and to verify the methods and the code and make sure they're doing that.
I'll make a motion that along with that, I'll make a motion that we proceed forward with awarding it on the condition that Bob and his staff is able to confirm the legitimacy of what you just said, the glass. And that way, at that point, we have, at this point, this body has moved forward on ours. And if there's a condition that we need Bob to make sure he's taken care of, that he can. I mean, at this point, it's been 2 years. We really could make forward on this. 4 years. Okay.
It took
at
2
least
years
the
to
two
get-
with
It was 2 years ago when we took a tour.
It took 2 years to get anybody to go look at it.
Yeah. So I think we move forward. We have a little bit. We've put these out. They were all aware of that. Honestly, and for disclosure, I've used Paul Davis before. The amount that they billed me was the exact amount that they quoted me, and it was to tear down a house inside of Providence for the city of Providence. So I vetted them on a city side, so I'm comfortable with what they're at because I've already used them. They're not an unknown quantity to me, but I realize that they're an unknown quantity to others.
Okay, so we have a motion from Ryan to award the contract to Paul Davis in the amount of $32,132.50 with the condition that the staff verify those issues we discussed related to the glass. And there's a second from John. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to award this bid. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, so we have Mayor Daines voting nay and the rest in favor, so that motion carries. And thank you, appreciate that, Casey. And that brings us then to item H, open items. Are there any other open items or reports that we need to hear from board or staff? I know we do have one from Professor Barron.
Thank you, Professor Barron. I'm wearing a multiple hat today, not just university, but with the Division of Aeronautics. I just want to bring a reminder about the Cache Air Fest on Saturday, the 28th of June. We're working with the airport manager and make sure that we are coordinating all the details, but we're planning on a one-day open house on the 28th of June. That's a Saturday. The Division of Aeronautics will be hosting their Aeronautical Education and Training Conference on Friday, the 27th. And so there'll be some events on campus. However, we're requesting on Friday for a practice period for the performers to come in. And so we're excited about that. And just to get everybody excited about this, currently our performers are committed: Brad Wurston, Barry Hancock, Carl Gashler, and we get a bonus because they'll do a two-ship aerial demonstration as well as individual solos, and Danny Sorensen. And so this will be a great event. We've not had one in 10 years. And if anybody has any comments or questions, we're going to be meeting right after this meeting here in this building room to further the information. And we'll update you any additional. We're coordinating with the city, the county for signage, for all the events. We want to make sure this is a big event. We will not be charging for the open house. We're planning on parking on the abandoned runway and shuttling people down for the ramps. Will be very similar for those that were here in 2015. And we're working with the FBO, and he's been very gracious. Scott's going to be on the committee to help us with the ramp plan. We've got folks coming in. We'll have an opportunity for people to fly. But there will be a NOTAM for the airport closed on that Saturday from 10 to 1600, and then on Friday for the rehearsal. Any questions from the board?
Okay. Thank you so much for the update and for all the work on that. Sounds like it's going to be a great event. Okay, that brings us then to item number 5, which is a discussion of our next board meeting. As Mayor Daines mentioned earlier, our March meeting would normally fall on a day when the airport conference is happening. March 6th is when it would normally be. The airport conference in St. George is happening that day, and we'll have several people in the room will be at that. So the question is, what is the board's preference? We talked about today several agenda items that we'd like to bring back. So normally I would say, let's wait and see if we even have items that need to be discussed, but we already know we have several that we discussed today that need to come back to us. So I do think we need to have a meeting. But what is the board's preference as far as when we do that? We could do it the week prior, February 27th. That's just a few weeks from now. We could do it the week after on the 13th. What's the board's preference?
I'm not available on those two, but I can do the 20th.
I could do the 13th.
I could do the 13th, or if we wanted to do it on the 27th of February.
I'm fine on either of those 2 days.
Okay. Why don't we shoot for March 13th then? And see, that actually gives us an extra week for staff to work on all those complex assignments we gave them today. So let's plan on that. Janine, will you just confirm that this room is available that morning? And then we'll plan on our normal time of 8:30 a.m. on March 13th. It is? Okay. All right. So let's plan on that.
Post that. I mean, I don't know that you necessarily have, I mean, and whoever you send minutes and agendas out to, maybe send a notice that the date has changed, just to give people a heads up.
I will send that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. All right, so that brings us to the end of our meeting. Is there anything else that needs to come before the board?
Calendar.
Okay, hearing none, we'll be adjourned. Thank you.
That would be awesome, yep. With maybe just a note, so people that weren't in the meeting.
Sure.